we set sail to our first session, we have our moderator facilitating this in the name of Mr. Glen Simon from the National Competitiveness and Productivity Council. Kicking off our first segment of the panelists, we have Serrier Agro-Processing Products in the name of Mr. Larry Serrier. He's the proud owner of this company. Ms. Darnell Dubois from CYN, that's our representative. And from the Department of Fisheries, Makiba Felix. Taking you over, Captain.
Thank you very much. So very happy to be here. As you said, Glen Simon from the National Competitiveness and Productivity Council. And the NCPC is very pleased to be here because everything to do with productivity and competitiveness, we love to be involved. And the blue economy represents this for us. And today, we're here to discuss exploring resilient and creative approaches to sustainable livelihoods and ecosystems in small island contexts. So before I delve further into the background, I wanted an introduction for our panelists. And I want you to just tell us more about yourself. So we start off first with our rep from the Ministry of Agriculture. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what the blue economy, say a little bit about what the blue economy means to you in agriculture.
Good afternoon. Hello? Yeah?
Yes, you can be heard.
Hi, so my name is Makiba Felix. I am a fisheries biologist and I work with the Department of Fisheries under the Ministry of Agriculture. When I think of the blue economy, I think of all the marine uses and all the marine spaces that we have in St. Lucia, in particular, since we're talking about St. Lucia. And I think of the way we could sustainably use these resources in a way that benefits all sectors. So it's not just about fisheries, although that's where my interest lies, but I think it's also about how tourism can effectively use the space while also leaving room for our fishers and other stakeholders in the area.
Excellent. And we have our rep, youthful rep from CYN. Tell us more about yourself and what does the blue economy mean to you in this context that we're speaking about?
Okay, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Darrell Dubois, and I am the representative from CYN, which is the Caribbean Youth Environmental Network. CYN is a regional organization, youth-led organization, based in 11 countries in the Caribbean and headquartered in Barbados. So from our St. Lucia chapter, we're very happy to be here to have a to be able to speak in such a forum. The blue economy, what it means to me. The blue economy is a way to sustainably develop our marine resources, and especially when it comes to ecotourism, we see the importance and we hope that it will bring the understanding for the need to invest into more scientific research and the better understanding for everyone of our current situation, our climate crisis, our resources being depleted. So from a youth perspective, we hope that bringing meshing economy with environmental matters, with the ocean matters, really gets people to understand the degradation that is happening and how it is affecting livelihoods and the potential to benefit livelihoods.
Now, you said quite a bit there, and I think the whole aspect of degradation that you spoke of in terms of solid waste and how that impacts our oceans and also the blue economy is so important. So we'll get a chance to delve deeper into this. But we have one of our panelists here who the blue economy means a lot to him. His entire livelihood is based on the blue economy and products. So, Larry, I didn't recognize you this morning. You cut your hair. You look like a younger man than I saw last time. So tell us about yourself. Tell us about your business. And what does the blue economy mean to you?
My name is Larry Serrier. I represent Serrier Agro-Products, which we do CMOS. I export CMOS also. I am a CMOS farmer based in Monrepo. What the blue economy means to me, as she said a while ago, sorry, I didn't get your name. I'm thinking that it's like a full circle. It's managing the environment which I work in, being sustainable, and giving back to different aspects of the community, giving back to different aspects of, when you talk about, she spoke about tourism and linkages, and making it more sustainable and eco-friendly for everybody. That's what the blue economy means to me.
So As a global community, observes World Creativity and Innovation Week, St. Lucia seeks to spotlight its unique position as a small island developing state with immense potential in the blue economy. This potential, when synergized with creative and sustainable practices, offers pathways towards economic resilience, environmental stewardship, and social equity. So I throw the question out. What does the blue economy mean in the context of St. Lucia? And how can we ensure it reflects both sustainability and cultural identity? Who wants to take this question? So, what does it mean to St. Lucia? Because, most of our people, we live right smack in the middle of the ocean. But some of our persons cannot swim. Some of them don't appreciate what we could do with the oceans around us. And some of us even go thirsty, though we are all around us is water. What does it mean for us, this blue economy, to St. Lucia, in terms of sustainability and cultural identity? Ministry of Agriculture is dying to answer this question. I could see this.
Well, I guess in terms of St. Lucia's context, you're right. We are a small island state, and we're surrounded by water. And what that means is that we derive a lot of benefits from the ocean, whether we think about it or not. Most of our goods come from ships. They arrive on the island through ships. We also have a lot of tourism activities happening on the water and under the water. So we have dive tourism. We also have sailing. We have the cruise ships that come to St. Lucia as well. Like you said, we rely on water a lot, and the oceans are part of our water cycle. So everything is connected, and whether we think about it or not, we rely very heavily on our ocean space.
So when we say we rely on water, CYEN, what does it mean that we rely on it? Is it just fish? Is it just the cruise ship season? What happens if it is that those two things are taken away? What about the ocean is going to assist us in creating a level of sustainability for our island's economy, and also the cultural identity? How do we identify as a people who encircled by water?
Okay, so with regards to that, the ocean, as much as it's a very important resource, it's also very important for transboundary movement, for shipping, for just people moving between the islands. The Caribbean region is becoming closer than ever with different things happening around the region, and there's high importance of proper transportation and so on. So other than tourism and fisheries, it's very big with culture as well. We would see how it's part of our culture to always have a beach day. If you think about, okay, I've had a very stressful week at work, your first thought is, okay, I should just go to the beach, go for a sea bath, or I don't even have to touch the water, just being right there next to the ocean. It's therapeutic to our people. That is what we grew up on. And I think everybody could possibly relate to that. So it's very important culturally. It still stems back to fisheries because leading to livelihoods. People in the coastal villages would often do their fishing practices, spear fishing and the seines and so on. And you'd see these activities support the different households in the coastal communities. Not sure if I touched on.
Yes, you touched. Go ahead.
Touch a little bit on the cultural identity. If you look at it from a brand perspective, if you look at Jamaica with their coffee, wherever you go in the world, you will find Jamaican coffee, and they will say that's the best. Yeah. Our CMOS, some people say that it's the best. So you could relate St. Lucia to the CMOS, and then afterwards, you would be thinking of the pitons, you would be thinking of the clean water, you would be thinking of the various activities. For example, where I am from, in Poile, in Monrepo generally, there's more than 13 beaches. There's ruins, there's Mamiku Gardens, where there's buttons from soldiers and all of that. So in terms of our culture, when you're looking at CMOS that comes from St. Lucia, automatically you go and search for St. Lucia culture. When you look at St. Lucia culture, you look at, as she was saying, you look at the beaches. Apart from the beaches, Journée Creole, like 65% of what you get on Journée Creole is seafood. So that brings the trend of thought, you know? And you go deeper when she was saying about the water, the ocean being clean, being more aware. So the blue economy would hit certain, like, various facades in the society, in the industry. So it would hit tourism, because you could do the CMOS tours. It could just well be when you leave in the airport, the first thing that you see is maybe a CMOS soap with the St. Lucian store. Like, the sky is the limit, and being innovative and having, as you said, best practices would speak well about your community. It would speak well about your country. It would give your village that you're from. For example, look at Ancillary. They're known for their Fish Friday. Prague could be known for CMOS. So it gives you a kind of identity, and then that comes back to your culture. You being proud of where you're from, you giving back. If you drink CMOS from Fruitsy, you know that it was made by a St. Lucian. Maybe you've been to a farm, you know how much work goes into it, and then that would foster a little bit of national pride, I believe.
Now, I think you mentioned some great linkages with the blue economy, because I think for us in St. Lucia, and for that level of education that needs to happen, persons need to see what is the linkage with the sea and everything else. They may not realize that the agriculture, the land-based agriculture, is also, there's an element that links back to it. And so this is very, very important, those linkages. But there are a number of big misconceptions about the blue economy. Can you identify some of them? And how can we address them through innovation and education? And I think one of them, if I may just bring it up, is that the sea will be around forever and will never get polluted. Who wants to address it first?
I think the blue economy, the misconceptions about it a lot has to do with education. A lot of the information is not out there to the average person, so they might not know what is going on. They might not know about the programs. They might not be aware of what they're actually doing, which is not good. A lot of people, as Dr. Fletcher was speaking earlier, and the Minister for Education, he was saying that a lot of the times, people think that the information is just there. Like, they don't want to go out to get the information. Like, you would say, oh, blue economy, or you would say a youth grant, but nobody knows exactly. On the radio, there's nobody actually explaining to you what it is. You might see it, but it's a one-off. People don't really listen to news anymore. They don't read. So there needs to have more awareness and more creative avenues to get the information out.
Yeah. So better communication is important.
Right.
But from you as a young person dealing with and seeing issues, Ms. Dubois, what are some of the big misconceptions you think the youth have about the blue economy, and how can we address it for them? And I mentioned earlier about pollution, solid waste. You see a number of scenes, a number of images after a beach party, a beach activity, with garbage indiscriminately put everywhere. Is that something that they believe, that the sea is always going to be salty, and because it's salty, it was always going to be clean, and so we don't have to really take care of it, it'll take care of itself?
Yeah, so as you bring up that point, the ocean is quite vast. So to many, it might seem like, their drop of their plastic bottle will not do any harm. But sometimes they don't pay attention to, if every single person on the planet drops their plastic bottle of water, could you imagine the impact that it actually would have? And so it goes along with what he was saying as well. It's a matter of education. So, and then also when you think of the blue economy, some people might think it's just, how we can gain revenue from the ocean. But in that is also efforts to protect and conserve, because we need to get people to understand that it's not like a renewable resource that it will go on lasting forever. We have to protect it. If people understand the impacts and how, let's say, for St. Lucia is impacted by the climate change and so on. Understand that our corals are dying, understand the situation with the rare species of reef-building corals that they're in decline, and how much work is actually being put in to actually build back our reefs, and understanding that if we do not have proper reefs, we don't have fish to sustain our fisheries for people to actually have the food to eat and to potentially explore. And so basically the cascade effect of our mismanagement, how it would really destroy the same resources that we depend on. So understanding the water we drink, we need our waterways to be clean. There's certain things we can and cannot do because it leads back into the ocean. There's the water cycle, as Makiba mentioned. Everything is interlinked. So our behavior, if we get people to understand that our behavior really does have a major impact on the sustainability of our oceans and our own future, then we would be in a better place moving forward. And all these efforts would not just go to waste because there's a lot of innovative ideas coming out and support to get things done. But if we do not watch our own personal behavior as individuals, all of these basically goes to waste. So that is a key thing to push forward to not just the youth, because the youth is the future, but every individual.
Makibi, I see you want to chime in, but I have a question for you in line with the education. The fact that you're from the Ministry of Agriculture, and the Ministry of Agriculture is doing quite a bit of education in terms of all the various practices, whether it's land-based, whether it is sea-based activities. But what can local creatives, artists, designers, filmmakers, how can they contribute to the marine conservation and economic growth that make it more sustainable? What other measures can they do so that that message that was spoken of by Ms. Dubois, that people get it, that their individual efforts amount to the whole, and the whole being to preserve this blue economy for us all, for generations to come?
I think one of the major reasons that we don't see that push in terms of marine conservation and also just preservation of our coastal spaces, it's a lot more challenging to see the effect of pollution on our marine spaces compared to land pollution. So if you walk on the streets, you'll see the bottles, you'll see the garbage, but most times once the waste enters the water, it sinks. So it enters and we forget about it. So I think one way that the creatives could support is by creating visual pieces that could assist, such as documentaries. So one way they could do that is by coming out and seeing the damage that pollution has caused to the marine environment. So it's not only solid waste. We have to think of chemical pollution as well. So when there's runoff from the land, we may not see the impact in the ocean. But what this does is that it affects our natural environment. So, for instance, after heavy rainfalls, if there's heavy sedimentation, we may not think of it too much. We'll just see the ocean and we'll see that it's very brown. But then when you look on it on the underside, from the marine perspective, a lot of the seagrass beds and the coral reefs are smothered. And when that happens, is the marine environments become damaged, and then that affects our fisheries, our coastal environments, because like Darrell mentioned, everything is interlinked. So when one is affected, everything else becomes affected. So I think maybe more creative pieces, more documentaries, more posters, flyers, and educational programs to just educate, because I believe education and awareness is one of the main things that we need to just educate the public on how whatever we do on land, it will affect what happens in the water and vice versa.
Excellent points. Now, I know, Larry, you're one of those that this question that I'm going to pose is directed at, because you are in the industry and you are supporting and being supported by the blue economy. And I know that you most likely are doing environmental practices that help you sustain your own product. So what untapped or unexplored business opportunities exist within St. Lucia's coastal and marine spaces that you think the blue economy can be a major role in creating these sort of innovative businesses?
Well, there's a lot, actually. In terms of CMOS, I would say that we need to be innovative. It's very challenging for me, being innovative. Yes, as she said, I do have my documentary out, A Day in the Life of a CMOS Farmer, on YouTube, which I tried to put out there so people will be more aware of the struggles of a CMOS farmer. But there's a lot of stuff in terms of the processes that they do the equipment that they use, the beds that they use, the materials that they use, trying to be more innovative in terms of the drying process, so it'll give you more time for yourself and less time to actually be in the sun, in terms of being innovative, in terms of the tour aspect of it, having CMOS stores, having talks in the school, having pop-up banners, having a respect for the environment also. As she said, sometimes people come by the beach and they litter, but it's multifaceted and it's a different challenge. You see, in agriculture, we were brought up to look at farmers without respect, because you look at a farmer, you would see a boots on, or you look at a fisherman, you would see him bareback. So then you would not really be respectable to a fisherman like you would be respectable to someone who works in a bank. But you would not litter the bank, but you would litter the beach. But if you respect the man in the bank, you would respect the guy who gives them fish. So you need to have it in the schools that you don't need to litter. You need to respect everybody. You need to respect the environment, the sea. When it comes to the materials that we use, the Ministry of Agriculture tried to get rid of the plastic bottles. We were using pool noodles, which was a little bit more biodegradable. There's different uses of PVC to be able to clean the beds properly. Screen doors, clay tiles, things to make it easier to clean. All of those things are ways that we could be innovative. As I said earlier, innovation, anybody could be innovative. You could be cutting sticks, but you just cut it at the right time. That's a competitive advantage that you have apart from somebody who would have to go and get it. So there's a lot of little things in the process that can happen in terms of, as you said, in terms of tours, in terms of awareness, in terms of speeches, the linkage with tourism, the linkage with the business community, selling the product. Exports and Lucia marketing the product, all of those things you could be innovative in, and you have a space along that line in each level of the chain.
Man, let me tell you, you're so well versed in this, and I like the way you put in your little ad there for check you out on YouTube. So he's being creative as well, and I said you have an education piece on, and it's very important that persons understand that unless they access it, unless they see that persons are doing work, sometimes they don't respect it. I like the point that you made, that sometimes we have this negative view of our fishermen, our farmers, and that puts a stigma and almost makes it look like we don't need to respect even the environment that they work in. So for Makiba, what policy changes or initiatives are needed then to unlock the creative and economic potential of our marine resources? So all that is said, we need to do this, we need to do that. Any policy that you could think that is you could reference that helps us achieve that goal of respecting and sustaining the marine resources? I know Ministry of Agriculture is doing quite a bit at the moment, and probably could highlight for us, because sometimes unless you say what you do, people think you're not doing. And there might be a lot that is happening, but I'd like for you to highlight some of those, or one or two of them.
Just context, when we think of the fisheries sector, we also think of fisheries and aquaculture. And CMOS would fall under the aquaculture sector in St. Lucia. So when we think of some of the innovative things that we have done at the Ministry of Agriculture, like Mr. Seri mentioned, for aquaculture in particular, we have been focusing on alternative growing methods of CMOS, because we have noticed that there has been an increase in the use of plastic bottles and also plastic lines in our ocean. And usually what we notice is after a hurricane or after a major disturbance, we would find a lot of these bottles and lines entangled in like the mangroves, and they'll come up on our shores as well. So we have been working with JICA, and we have been looking at the raft method for CMOS cultivation. So we're hoping that with this method, one, we use less plastics in the ocean. When there's going to be like storm surges, heavy rainfalls, and hurricanes, one of the advantages that we have noticed is that once you sink the raft, one, doesn't get lost, and two, you lose less CMOS compared to the normal traditional method. So we're trying to, one, increase sustainability, and also to ensure that the CMOS farmers, whatever they invest in their farm, it remains in the farm, because it's very costly to start up some of these businesses, and we know that after major disturbances, you could lose everything. As it relates to aquaculture as well, the Department of Fisheries also looks at creating ways to reduce our pollution, our impact on the marine space. So in terms of aquaculture farmers, we've been looking at ways to find more local and natural feeds for the aquaculture farmers because that's one of the major costs that they incur every year. So we try to look for more natural feeds, and we're hoping that, with a reduction in their expenses in feeds, they will have more returns on their investment. As it relates to fisheries or our capture fisheries, where we think of our fishers on the boats using the nets and lines, we think of fish aggregating devices. So the department has worked very hard to deploy and put these devices out. And what it does is that it serves, as the name says, as an aggregator for fish. So the fishers now use less fuel because they know exactly where to go to target certain fish. As it relates to policy, in terms of the Department of Fisheries, one of our goals or mandates is to encourage healthy marine ecosystems. So we've been working with the Coast Fish Project, which is also funded by the government of Japan. We work a lot with the Japanese government. And what that project does is that we look at creating nurseries and artificial reefs under the water. So we're hoping that by establishing these areas, we could encourage more fish and other marine organisms to come and live in the area. And that way we would not only improve our marine space for the fishers, but it's also good for other sectors because, again, we're focusing on the blue economy. So if you go to snorkel or dive, you could see more fish, healthier ecosystems, and that's the goal that we're hoping to achieve.
Excellent.
I think.
So I hope that will translate to cheaper fish. Because fish is expensive, and now you have to decide when you eat fish.
Well, yes. And I mean, in addition to just focusing on the sector itself, we cannot forget the infrastructure that goes along with our fishing sector. So a lot of the fishing ports have now become solarized, or they're trying to become solarized. So if the electrical bill goes down, then that probably means that ice could be cheaper for the fishers. So again, the expenses will go down, and maybe the price of fish should go down as well.
Excellent. Yeah. Now, CYN, I know you deal with a lot of the issues that young people have in various areas, particularly looking at the environment. So for you, how can we support young entrepreneurs and creatives in developing sustainable ventures tied to the ocean? A while ago, it was said about the point of entry. It's expensive to even start off a business to deliver sea. But what is it that we could do to help young people enter? And if they have that greater sensibility, because it's a business for them, it'll translate to them preserving the ocean and preserving the blue economy.
Okay. Thanks for the question. With regards to supporting the youth with getting to do these ventures, a lot is based on education as well. So so before I go into the education, there are opportunities, for example, with how he does the CMOS and so on. But to the youth, the actual issue there may be how attractive these opportunities may look to them, because a lot of it is actually very labor intensive. And
what are you saying about the youth?
I mean, we're very technology driven.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then now there is the opportunity to how you incorporate technology to do and sustain.
So that's the thing. That's where I like to speak on the education part of things. So we do have programs locally now. We have the South Louis Community College, which now offers the bachelor's degree in environmental sciences, I believe. I'm not sure if there's the ability to specialize in marine science, but I think it's important that we have that diversity in the education being offered, where if a student in environmental science wants to specialize and become a marine biologist locally, that should be a very possible option, because St. Lucia, our landscape, our seascape is perfect for practical exercises, perfect for youth to actually think about different innovative ideas. So being in that space with the right education, being in St. Lucia and getting to go out and see what's actually happening in St. Lucia, because I would have studied marine sciences myself, but I did it in another country. So my perspective and understanding of the whole blue economy is focused on another country. It's not even in St. Lucia. So if we have that offered here, we there is a greater chance for a lot of the innovative ideas to actually happen. It could happen through the school projects when you would have to do your final research at SAFA during the degree program. Because in CYN, we actually have a member who is our secretary. She is Jenna Williams. She goes to school in the United States. And what she's doing is research because she has a natural sciences major with a medical major. So what she's looking at is the sargassum. We understand that sargassum is a problem all over. She's looking at the sargassum from a biomedical perspective and seeing that it could be used in the sense of prosthetics, creating prosthetics for people with diabetes who would be losing limbs. So there's actually that potential. And look, this is a St. Lucian born and raised student from the south of the island who, she said her father grew up in Seamoss as well. And she was inspired just from her upbringing and seeing that issue. So her time living so close to the sea, seeing the changes with the environment, she got inspired and intertwined medicine and the issues that we face on the marine level locally. And she's currently working on that thesis right now to make that a possibility. There's other instances where there was the Project CR, Project Coral Restoration, at the University of Waterloo. And that's where Caribbean students got together and they got the opportunity to do a robotics model for basically a robot to do coral restoration instead of how highly labor intensive coral restoration is, to have the divers go out every so often and clean the corals and plant the corals. So they work on a blueprint to create a robot that will be sustainable for the environment. It will have biodegradable materials, so it will not be damaging the environment, and it will be there to manually or automatically take care of coral restoration. And that would be a huge plus. So between the prosthetics contributing to medicine and then the robots contributing to basically the preservation of our corals, there's a lot to be explored. The marine environment has a lot of potential in a lot of ways when it comes to medicine especially. There's a lot of things that exist in the water that could help with cancers and so on. So I believe education, and not just in the sense of being aware of what we're doing, but to inspire our youth to do more, to utilize the true potential of the ocean and its resources to make things happen.
I think this is such an excellent point because it's really centers around the digital tools that can be employed to make sure that it is attractive. The use of AI, the use of GIS, the use of VR, so that persons understand and are more interested in as young people in there. And I like the use of the robot because older persons want to use the robot too. It's not just for the youth. But I think it is quite fitting. And I was going to pose that question to you about AI tools and how you think innovation would help even your business and other businesses to prosper in the blue economy.
Well, it would help significantly. I mean, even the use of a GoPro camera while you're doing your work would show, you don't physically have to be there. You could just send a video or something.
You do a recording, it's documenting the process at the same time.
Right, at the same time, So there are different, using the drone would be good, especially to monitor sargassum. You would know how the tides go and you would know to give the farmers early warning. All of those things are things that you could have in place. Trail cameras on the CMOS sticks also to monitor the level of the sea, to monitor even pre-elasticity. All of those things you could look at. A while ago, she touched on someone from overseas doing some work here, and you was talking about making it more attractive for people to enter the industry, because sometimes if you're a good salesman and there are two vehicles to be sold, I could sell you the brand or I could sell you the benefits. People want to know about the benefits sometimes. So, for example, if you have children in Mikud and you have children in Ancillary, they would not want to go to Mikud and clean the beach, but if they get a road trip to go to Ancillary, they would do it. I believe a lot in pilot programs and even exchange students too. I mean, if we don't have enough people in St. Lucia to do something, we have more than 13 embassies. There's somebody that wants to do something down here. So that would make it more attractive. So me seeing someone come in and do it, and I'm interested, and they're doing it from somewhere else, it would be more attractive for me to try and learn what they're doing. So I like the
Knowledge
point.
sharing at the same time.
Yes, I like the point that she made. But in terms of technology, also the Ministry of Agriculture and Flora and Fauna doing a lot of work with standards, even the Bureau of Standards trying to put something together for the CMOS, also the Ministry of Agriculture, the lab, they're trying to do some testing also. So all of those things could possibly in the future, give us a better standing where we are.
Excellent. So I have a friend who's into snuba, and he's actually trying a number of innovative things. And one of the things that he's done to try to differentiate his business is to create an underwater museum, but also working in collaboration with fisheries and making sure that there's preservation of the reefs, so no reefs get damaged. So persons could now do a underwater museum and learn about, he has even sank major images and paintings of our Nobel laureates. So you could go under the water and see it. So any one of you could dive and go and see the laureates. If you haven't seen them above the ground, you could see them below the water. But this leads me to a question here. So we talk about all those things that we can do, employing drones and employing modern technology. But what are the challenges in integrating traditional knowledge and practices into modern blue economy strategies? Any strategies that you've gotten, Makiba, in terms of the pushback from fishermen? That's the way they've done it traditionally for years. Their father did it this way, everybody did it this way. And so trying to sell them on new practices, on sustainable practices, better practices, is it difficult? How could we marry the two so that we could have a better economy and more sustained future? And any one of you could pick it up as well.
Well, in terms of linking the two, I would not say that there has been major resistance, but it can be challenging trying to incorporate new technologies into, like you said, the traditional methods. So, for instance, I know as it relates to our fish and our fish sizes, sometimes once the fishers go out and they catch something, they will bring it back, despite the size, despite whether or not, it's healthy or not. So I think one of the ways that we could encourage them, and I know that it has been working, is try to encourage, especially for things like lobsters, to send back the smaller lobster, because at the end of the day, you're going to need that smaller or juvenile lobster to grow into the adult to give you more lobsters for the future. So it's just about us framing it in a way of like sustainability, that if you remove all the juveniles, there'll not be any fish later on for you or for your grandchildren. Another way that we have tried incorporating new technologies with the traditional methods, I am thinking of things like the pot fishery. So one of the major challenges that we have in the region is ghost fishing. So that happens when the fishing equipment, so nets and the pots, are lost and they keep fishing. So they keep fishing and there's no way of removing it from the water, and we lose a lot more fish and other marine organisms such as our turtles. So one of the ways that we have tried to, solve or at least minimize this effect in terms of the pot fishery, we have been working with JICA again to create some biodegradable panels on the pots. So what that means is that once the pot is created, these panels, after a while, if the pot is lost, the panels will degrade and then the pot opens up. So that way, whatever fish and whatever organism is caught inside, it'll be released. So at least that way, we would reduce the effect of ghost fishing on the environment while also ensuring that fishers are able to fish. Now, I know with this method, I think adding the additional biodegradable panels, it might be more expensive to add like the twine and the other materials that they use to tie the panels together. But then once you frame it in a way of sustainability, once you frame it in a way of like sustainability and future preservation of our marine environment, they are more likely to adopt this method versus what they are traditionally doing, where if they lose their pot, they lose everything, and we lose a lot of our marine organisms, and it damages our marine life.
Excellent. So, Ms. Dubois, I know you want to answer this question, but I will add another piece to it for you. What role can community-based enterprises play in ensuring inclusive growth within the blue economy? So the community and the fishing communities are very much present. It's an entire community, it's an ecosystem. And the persons who do the fish Fridays, in Grosile you have this event almost, is it every day or every Friday? And you have fish and you have lobby. How can they help in sustaining the blue economy? Because overfishing is a problem without actually putting back, as was said, without actually throwing things back and ensuring that we wait the time that we're supposed to wait, observe the no fishing periods for both lobster and no harvesting periods. How can the community really help in sustaining this blue economy? Has there been measures put in place that you know of that probably your agency has been doing as well to help create this this symbiotic relationship between the community and the blue economy?
Okay. So with regards to the, let's say, the Friday night fisheries and so on, I believe that those people who participate and make these things happen, I believe they understand the value in sustaining their resource, because your livelihood depends on, the sale of these fisheries resources, and they understand it's important to not degrade that resource. And they would be the first ones to see that a few years ago, when they're ready, they would get 50 pounds of lobby, but now they're only able to get 25. So I think they, on a personal level, will be the first to urge on, the overfishing parts or the harvesting of the juveniles and so on that Makiba would have mentioned. Also, from our group's perspective, from CYN's perspective, what we do participate in, well, we host every year a series of coastal cleanups in different communities around the island. So with this, we would engage stakeholders from the community. So we had one this year already in Dennery, so the Fordor Beach. So we would have engaged people who live in the area. We also partnered with the St. Lucia Olympic Committee that time to get their athletes to join in on the cleanup and so on. So there'll be residents. We also had a forestry officer who is responsible for the division there. And when we have others, we would invite the stakeholders for the area, basically.
Ms. Well, let me just interject a little bit. So I've always been mindful of those cleanups and just thinking, what is the real impact of the cleanup? When you look at it, this year you've cleaned, next year you go back to the same location. Has the situation improved in your estimation, or is it that it's back to the same thing and you're cleaning almost the same amount every single time?
Okay, so truly, the core purpose of the cleanups is data collection. We understand that our groups doing the cleanups on this annual basis is not going to make the biggest dent in the pollution that we would love to make, but the purpose is still data-driven. So every year, at the same time of the year, the same locations, and we would try to get the same numbers, do that cleanup, record it. So it's a strategic cleanup. It's not just that we go there, we pick up trash, and then we get rid of it. No, we go there with our data sheets. We have it listed out properly. If it's bottle caps, plastic bottles, if it's food, if it's beverage containers, if it's chemical containers, buckets, plastics, food wrappers. So it is a whole chart that we use, and we classify the garbage. We also sort it. We take the usable containers, which would have been a specific type of beverage bottles, and we send it to a recycling facility. But what we do with the data, we go along the Ocean Conservancy Guidelines, which is an international organization that collects data on trash around the world. So for St. Lucia, we're the ones responsible uploading data for the trash in St. Lucia. So we would, for example, have Savensby, 400 pounds of litter collected, and we have that over a series of years. So it's been a lot of years that we've been collecting the data, and this data is really to go towards making informed decisions. So now we'll have a better understanding of what is the pollution actually like at Casaba Beach, what is actually the solution at Fordor, what is the types of pollution. So what we would have seen is that in Dennery, we would have found a lot of pesticide bottles, and we understand that the pesticide bottles would wash down from the Lakai River, and because Dennery is a farming community.
So let me interject again. I'm really happy with that question and how you're responding to the answer. So now that you have all that data and agriculture is right next to you and they're the ones supplying the pesticide bottles to the farmers, how does that data translate to create real changes so that we do not see the reoccurrence of those same bottles the following year? Because it's good too that we collect data, but now how can we make evidence-based decisions and not just upload it? Is it that there's collaboration, we're not doing silos, and you collected the data, but they're unaware of it? How does it work? Just for you to tell me what you do with the data. Go ahead, Ms. Dubois.
Okay, so the data is public and accessible to all. Every year, the Ocean Conservancy publishes that data, so whoever is in need of the data can find it through a simple Google search.
So we don't do collaborations with Ministry of Agriculture and say this is what we found? Okay, so now I'm putting you in touch with Ministry of Agriculture for that reason. So we don't have much time. I'm going to come back to you. So just think about how it is that we could do these collaborations, because that's one of the things we talk about education. And if you're doing such valuable work and you're collecting data, that data is supposed to inform change and how we make it. And you have persons who could help influence policy right next to you.
So to add, we do, so for the Department of Sustainable Development, they created a solid waste a marine litter management plan that we also adapted into our Ocean Conservancy guidelines. So we use that. We also follow Ocean Conservancy. So after our cleanups, we do have to submit our data to the Department of Sustainable Development. So that's where our data goes.
Okay. So let me get Larry in. I want you now to imagine a future. If we were to imagine St. Lucia 10 years from now with a thriving blue economy, what does that future look like when we say a thriving blue economy? Because we do have a blue economy at the moment. But what should it look like, or can it look like to you 10 years from now if we do and employ practices such as what we've been mentioning here in this discussion? And it goes for Ministry of Agriculture, where you can respond after.
Well, I think you would see massive employment, massive innovation, massive collaboration and linkages between all sectors, agriculture, industry. You would see more youth engagement. You would see more respect for farmers, more respect for the environment. You would see a cleaner St. Lucia. You would see a more thriving tourism industry. You would see more national pride. You would see more young people being more excited to give back to St. Lucia itself, as opposed to the brain drain and going overseas. It would translate into a healthier St. Lucia. Since you're talking about innovation, a lot of the, maybe it would be a lot of the stuff that the pharmaceutical industry would need. We would have to be the brokers right now of a lot of things. It would, when you talk about food security, we would be ahead of the game maybe in the Caribbean, being self-sustainable, a lower import bill. It would just be a different St. Lucia. The air would be cleaner. We would have better mangroves. I mean, more green areas, more water collection. As we were saying, like the rainwater harvesting, and a lot more better practices in terms of agriculture itself. Being through whatever you want to go into a sector of the agricultural industry, there's a guideline available right away. There's an extension officer right away. There's a police, agricultural police wherever you are. Pre-Lasson, it would be down by miles. We would have community gardens. We would have everything that a utopia would want to have. That's what I would see.
Man, I want to live in that, St. Lucia. This is a wonderful picture that you've painted there 10 years from now. So he mentioned collaboration, he mentioned synergies, he mentioned, all the things that I think we want to aspire to. In terms of Ministry of Agriculture, I pose the same question to you because you are directly involved in helping to help shape policy and enforce the policy. So imagine 10 years from now, what would a thriving blue economy in St. Lucia look like?
For St. Lucia, on the blue economy on a whole, I'm thinking we could have a more diverse blue economy because there's a lot that we could do with our blue spaces. So it would be important that St. Lucians learn how to diversify the industry and also to go into different aspects. If it's not CMOS stores, you could make something out of the CMOS jelly, you could do day tours, ecotourism. I think that's something that we should look forward to. In terms of the fishery sector, I'm thinking even if we would like to expand, we also have to be aware of the fact that climate change is real and that in the future there'll probably be less resources because of the global impact of increased hurricanes, storm surges, changes in migration patterns of fishes. And I think that one of the things that we could look forward to in the fisheries sector is the improvement in our value chain. So trying to get the most out of our resources. So not only do we catch the fish, but we use the fish to make maybe fish oil. We could use the bones to make something else, some decorative pieces. So I think that's something that we could look forward to. As it relates to policy, again, education and awareness, these are two of the main things that we should look forward to or strive to improve in St. Lucia, to just educate St. Lucians on the importance of our marine space, of our blue spaces, and all the resources that we have within the area. So I think that's something that we could look forward to.
All right. And Ms. Dubois, how can the next generation be empowered to become leaders and innovators in ocean-based industries? Because we've spoken a lot about all the innovation, the education, but what is it that we need to do to make them leaders? Because we have a lot of followers and we have a leadership crisis. And I think if they're called to be leaders, then that means that that's when the change really happens. What do you think needs to happen?
Okay. I believe that the youth should be more involved with more action-based situations and not just, listening in or just having a few words and not being able to actually contribute to the different things happening, to the policies and so on. So there has been a lot of great things that our youth in St. Lucia has been doing across sectors, business-wise, with technology, with medicine. And I feel like we've been proving our worth to be able to contribute on a higher level. And basically the continued support to allow us to nurture our innovation and our creativity, that would be the best thing moving forward. And creating those spaces for us to learn and to also contribute. So with that, I believe that we can become great leaders in the future once the support is given, once the space is given.
And the opportunities are provided.
Right.
Yes. So we only have a small space left in order to before we close. So within 1 minute, I want each of you to respond to one question for me. Just 1 minute, I'll be timing you. 1 minute. What bold, creative idea could radically shift St. Lucia's relationship with its marine resources? So I want each of you to give me one bold, creative idea from each of you. So let's start with agriculture. So what is it that you think we need to do? We need to think out of the box. Innovation calls for creative thinking, a different mindset. We need to be disruptors in the industry, but creative disruptors that also embrace the clean oceans, safe environment. What bold, creative idea could radically shift St. Lucia's relationship with its marine resources? You want Larry to go first? Larry always looks like he's ready. Larry, go ahead.
Well, thinking outside of the box, I would say bold would be involving all of the embassies that we have in St. Lucia and finding one person from each embassy to contribute to the marine resources, to help us with our marine resources and education. So collectively, I find that would make a major change because you have the brains of every country that you have investing in our country, giving back to our country. So it would be like our country would be their pilot project. So if they succeed, we succeed.
Excellent. So I go back to Makiba.
Giving us tough questions.
No, just one bold, creative, radical shift that you think.
Well, I think one of the major shifts that we could look forward to is trying to incorporate more of our science and our data in our policies and our plans. I think that's one way that we could help improve our blue economy space because a lot of the times some of the data is missing and it's not necessarily because we don't have it, it's just that we don't have the ability to collect the data. So I think once we collect more data, we could use that to create better plans and policies that would help shape our blue economy for the future.
So I see you picking on Ms. Dubois. She's not sharing her information. She's just putting it up there. So you have a challenge now to share, to collaborate. So I ask you the same question. And from a youth perspective, what bold, creative idea could radically shift St. Lucia's relationship with the marine, with our marine resources?
Okay, you said bold.
Bold.
So bold. I don't think that the environmental industry is respected enough. So what if, think of, it is mandated that every company, every business, every ministry has to have an environmental person, an environmental department to ensure that whatever it is that their business is about, their ministry is about, is in line with environmental matters. So somebody's always there to make sure that, okay, this is our system. Yes, we're in this day and age, we're in the 21st century. Why are we using so much paper? Why are we printing everything? Why can't we use, the Google, the whole system, Office 365, to make sure, we go paperless, we conserve, we actually conserve. So manage the company's actions within and outwards to see how they could actually contribute to sustainable activities to the country. So that, and I did have something else.
One I told you, just one.
One? No, but yeah, but essentially, because I feel like the environmental profession is not as big. It's obviously it's not as big as a doctor or so on, but to make sure that it is respected in every sense, we would definitely get a more collaborative effort with protection and sustainability.
All right, thank you very much. So this brings us to the end of this very, very informative discussion. We're at the National Symposium on Creativity and Innovation, and it is the theme, the Ocean's Call, Innovate, Sustain, Prosper. So let me thank our panelists for your wonderful insights into all the various questions. Let me thank the Department of Education, Innovation Department for this opportunity to share and to bring this topic, a little more knowledge on it and how our oceans can sustain us, how our blue economy is tied to everything that we do. So join us for the next discussion. It's been wonderful having you and for us being here as well.